On this week's program, Fandom Pulse gives the Bro SR the credit they always wanted but never deserved. Ginny D doesn't understand that pretending to play still looks a little bit like playing. Dubgron goes way back to make a baseless point against Victor Gorchev. The Redcaps has the bad maths, and Condor is so close yet so far from self-awareness that it's almost comical. Welcome one and all to Driving and Dragons and the weekly show where we mock the tendency online communities have to grossly over-exaggerate with a few gross overreactions of our own on intelligence as a dump stat. I greatly appreciate your time and viewership, and if you truly want to help the channel grow, like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. I'm pushing hard to get to 1,000 subscribers, and I know we can do it with a little help from you guys. Remember that Corvid Codex Volume 1 is currently in its second week on Kickstarter. Support Indie Pulp and some of your fellow gamers by backing the project. Don't wait, pledge now and adjust later if you are unsure of what level that you'd like to support the book at. This week is a very busy one, though it did clear up just a little. 8 hours ago, I was on John with Jack Monday, Eclectic Goat on Tuesday. This is Dundermoose on Wednesday, my own live stream on Thursday, Driving the Conversation, and Diversity and Dragons afternoon stream on Saturday, followed by the Week in Geek with the T-shorted Historian. Well, Jack and Goat reached out today and had to reschedule my time with them, so that does give me just a little bit more breathing room. Good thing, too, because in case you can't tell, I'm pretty sick right now, and I could use the time to recover. So Wednesday, I will be joining the RPG pundit Dundermoose and Griff Morgan from Secrets of Blackmoor for a panel chat about the Bro SR playstyle as Dundermoose tries to get the view from the outside looking in. Thursday, I have special guests on my own stream as we look at the upcoming Kickstarter for Agile Monks, Wondrous and Dangerous Consortiums, and Zendria World Lore. It's an OSR product that's designed for new school compatibility and West Marches style play. Finally, catch me on Double D's Saturday stream as we go over Corvid Codex and the struggles of getting people to back indie authors. Now that all the announcements are out of the way, let's put on our I'm with stupid shirts and get down to business. We open up with a brain-dead comment from Fandom Pulse. Pulse claims to be an entertainment journo site and covers everything from movies and books to gaming and comics with the stated tagline, "Take back the culture from woke corporations." So we're off to a good start. However, as is often the case with journalistic outlets that cover a niche hobby from outside said niche, they have a tendency to take people at their word and to phone in some of their research. For instance, any fan of J.R.R. Tolkien would scoff at the implication that his non-Middle-earth writings, such as Sir Gawain and the Green Knight or his translation of Beowulf, are quote-unquote forgotten works. Now, if your experience with Tolkien starts and stops with Peter Jackson adaptations, it may open your eyes to a deeper world of elite prose, but these are not forgotten. They've always been very widely available and discussed. However, when they come out with Appendix N creator Jeffro Johnson to reveal lost secrets of Dungeons & Dragons, this is just incredibly shoddy work. They may as well spit on their hand before typing this, given how much of an ego stroke it is. Jeffro did not create Appendix N, and before anyone tries to cry about how they must mean his book on Appendix N, that does not excuse this level of misappropriated credit and poor headline writing, especially when dealing with a praise-obsessed clown brigade like the Bro SR. Lost secrets? Perhaps they should have read How to Win at D&D so they can see how Jeffro's lost secrets are largely just out-of-context quotes from early D&D figures. Honestly, while several of the people quoted in How to Win are dead, the people who knew them have all but unilaterally said Jeffro was deliberately misrepresenting them. Hell, he relies heavily on the Secrets of Blackmoor documentary, and Griff Morgan has been brought into that panel discussion I'm on Wednesday with Dundermoose specifically to refute Jeffro's crap. To give Jeffro credit for the creation of Appendix N, which may have been penned while he was in diapers if he was even alive at all, is the kind of thing that makes you want to encourage Fandom Pulse to quietly remove the word journalism from their profile. The generic one makes her triumphant return to Intelligence as a Dump Stat this week. When it comes to folks like Pointy Hat, Ginny D, and the Dungeon Dudes, I often think it is more like an ooze that magically had a brief moment that got their intelligence up to 3, but I digress. Ginny came out to defend the cash cow she rides the ass of like a Georgia Tech. I mean, her friends in the actual play community. And let's not be subtle here. She is not talking about your channel where you stream your Saturday night game for like 6 viewers from a stationary camera and use a unidirectional mic. Ironically, if she were, she might actually have a point. No, this is about Critical Role, Dimension 20. You know, the kind of actual plays with production meetings and camera crews, because that's how I start every session. I start them all with a formal production meeting with every player present and sober. I definitely don't sit around, until 45 minutes after we're supposed to start, dicking around waiting to find out if that one player who would be there in a minute is actually going to show up. Swear to God, RPGers are like deadbeat dads. They tell you that they're going to stop by the gas station for cigarettes and then you never see them again until they ask you, when's our next session after you finish college and move 4 states away? Anyway, Ginny comes out with, people love to claim actual plays aren't really playing and they're scripted because you can't disprove it. They are literally watching you play and still claim you don't play. Checkmate? Yes, Ginny. And Nicolas Cage really has sex with Angelina Jolie in a Lamborghini while making very cringy car references, and Vin Diesel's '02 Honda Civic does 250 miles per hour with nitrous and has 47 gears because I saw those things on film. Let me spell it out for you. Though I don't think I have enough of those little magnetic fridge letters in bright colors to really get it down to your level. They're not playing role-playing games as role-playing games in the manner in which they actually operate in the real world. Yes, they use rule books, roll dice, level up, etc. But at the end of the day, they sit down as a group and agree to function in a way that produces a viable and watchable entertainment product. The game is nothing but a vehicle to drive their improv dinner theater show. It would be like if we agreed to play Monopoly, but then intentionally skip properties or make crazy trades or make poor gameplay decisions because while getting a corner Monopoly, loading it with hotels, and then hiding in jail as long as possible is smart gameplay, it'd be incredibly boring to watch. They play the game just like Paul Walker drove the cars in Fast and Furious. Sure, he cranked up the Supra and drove it down the road, but he drove it like 15 miles an hour with a bunch of wildly dramatic jerky movements, counting 1, 2, 3 before he and the guy next to him eased their cars into each other so they could all later use camera angles and editing tricks to make it look like a balls out high-speed chase. So yeah, Jenny, checkmate. I could have beat you 15 moves ago, but it looks better on camera to get you down to where we both only have 3 pieces left, but we're really playing chess. Dubgron over on X gave me a healthy dose of deja vu. How? Well, I think he may be the very first person to end up on Intelligence as a Dump Stat for making the same retarded comment in reply to the same post that somebody else did. You see, Victor Gorchev, also known as the Stay Buffed Marshmallow Man, is an indie game designer and talented professional artist who is very much in the rules as written crowd. Now, unlike his close friend, the Basic Expert, he tends to have a much better head on his shoulders about outlining explicitly why raw is the default. Almost a year ago, he posted that his point is do what you want in your games at your tables, but when you are discussing games, particularly in terms of like mechanics and stuff, we should use the common language of rules as written. He's actually nicer about that than I am. I feel that, unless expressly otherwise clarified, discussing games should always default to raw, as it is the only objective common ground from which we can have a productive discussion. Well, Dubgron, he dug that tweet up and gave it a reply that I'm 99% certain landed someone else on IAADS back when Victor first said it. He said, common language of raw is a misnomer because the text has no inherent meaning. We give it meaning via interpretation, and it isn't common, objective, or neutral. It's biased. This is idiotic in the extreme. I mean, let's start with, words. Text has no inherent meaning. You want to talk about something that has a serious issue in the world today is these complete morons that think that words get to have definitions based on feelings as opposed to what they actually fucking mean. But what this numbskull is doing here is trying to play in the margins and misrepresent what Victor is saying, and he's also misrepresenting what the anti-rules as written folks actually do in these discussions. This is not about how you and I might have a different understanding of what Gary meant in the AD&D GM. That actually has some merit, and as a side note, I would say that Gary's decision to write AD&D in prose, and grandiose prose at that, rather than writing his books as rule books, was one of the most unintentionally damaging things he could have done to the hobby long term. That said, what folks like Dubgron are actually trying to defend with this "we all interpret the words different" line is the practice of trying to use their own house rules, alterations, and omissions as the basis for discussing the way the game is designed, and that is utterly pointless. This is just bad faith argumentation, plain and simple, just like it was last time. One of the angriest old school X accounts makes the list this week. The Redcaps is a solid OSR podcast and actually has a litany of comments on X that sound like they came straight out of my scripts. Hell, he basically said the same thing I just did about Ginny D's idiocy. But Kevin is a great example of exactly why I lampoon in this series. The majority of his posts are spot-on observations and are generally well thought out, but bro, why so angry? This dude will go to war over even a slight disagreement and will gladly overstate the issue and then try to weasel it back into rationality when you point that out. So he says that 99% of the complaining online about toxic DMs and players is because people don't communicate like adults and would rather cry to the heavens on Reddit than have a conversation where someone might get their fee-fees hurt. He's not wrong, except in the numbers. Maybe in 1997 or even 2007 that would hold true, that's 99% of it. Most crying about bad players is because you want to bitch but are too chicken shit to tell your buddy, hey dude, how about actually reading your spells before the game next time? It is really frustrating when you don't know how to play your character. But that hasn't been the case in a very long time. Unfortunately, I'd say a healthy plurality, if not an outright majority of toxic player or DM behavior, is both intentional and it is very deliberate. And there's no amount of communication outside of "you're no longer welcome at the table" that's going to fix it. And here's the crux of the issue. Just like the raw situation with rules, we have to speak from the baseline. The baseline of these discussions is not, well, the best way to deal with it is just to tell them to piss off. And it certainly doesn't help to try and argue that a significant portion of the player base just needs better communication when no amount of communication is going to fix it. This is ignoring the nails in your driveway and advocating that the solution is a healthy stock of tire plugs and careful maneuvering down the driveway. When discussing it publicly, it needs to be about the cause, not the symptoms, and it absolutely cannot be hand-waving away a huge part of the problem, which is what the Redcap does when instead of recognizing that reality and adjusting their stance, they double down and try to pretend that many of these bad actors are inherently and intentionally bad. Okay? Trying to pretend that they're not. Doesn't work. Last but not least, we return after a very long hiatus to the nest of Condor DM to see what egg he laid this time. Props where they're due. Condor had Max Liao of Legion of Myth on a 3-hour stream, and about 2 hours and 15 minutes of it showed Steven to be a reasonable person acting in good faith and a solid interviewer. Unfortunately, when the conversation turned to Condor's own experiences, he fell right back into his deluded lack of self-awareness. Many of you know, I generally don't bring him up. In fact, he wasn't even in the running last year for Dumbest of the Dumb in my IAADS award show. Most of you also know the reason why I don't bring him up, but it just escapes him. This show, outside of big-name influencers and corporate entities, is exclusively about people who can understand and get the joke. Most of the Bro SR guys laugh, then give as good as they get when I bust on them in here. Hell, Rump DM even made a smart-ass comment about not letting B-dubs beat him again in the race to see who gets trashed by me the most times this year. Meanwhile, you have guys like OTH Widget here who blow up and get all butthurt because they can't, they take this stuff far too seriously, and they're not going to be featured on here anymore. And therein lies your answer, Steven. You had asked Max about that, about all being on this, and Max said, he goes, I'm pretty sure that's pretty tongue-in-cheek. On your show, when you abandoned interviewing your guest to cry about this great mistreatment you think you get, you brought me up. Guy who drives. Well, Condor was complaining about how I said all these terrible things and made attacks on Harmony Ginger and nobody cared, but he barely said her name and he got the torches and pitchforks. And no, Condor, before you even go there, that's called paraphrasing. I'm not quoting you, but that's basically what you said, is that I made fun of Harmony and I got away with it, but you say something about Harmony and, everybody hates you. Now, I do have to say this, if it were not for my policy of only picking on people who can take it in good fun, Condor and people like him would be an endless stream of content for this show. Not because they say a disproportionate number of stupid things, but because they blow up so bad at the tiniest little poke. Hell, before that stream, Condor went off on me by name because I bothered to inform people that Max Liao doesn't really use X. Somebody said, hey, Legion of Myth, are you really going to be on an interview with Condor? And I popped in, I said, hey, Max doesn't really use X. And now I'm apparently part of a cabal that's out to destroy and ruin Steven's life. It was such over-the-top craziness that I could make serious hay out of it, and you can pretty much bet that Diversity and Dragons will. Steven, you know why Harmony was joking back and forth about what I said about her? Because she gets the joke. Because she has had numerous in-depth and respectful conversations with me and has even sat here for 2 hours on a live stream with me. Same with all the Bro SR guys. They spew their patently idiotic claims of gaming greatness, and I mock them for it. Then they tag me in 30 damn posts about soup aisles and winning secrets. I turn around and tell them that, I own the whole damn grocery store and their ass along with it because they're just playing in my store. And then we talk about gaming stuff and have a decent conversation because neither of us are taking it, each other's shtick too seriously. And most of us anyway. There's a few bros who haven't figured out that Bro SR stupidity is largely for attention. So here's the difference, Condor. I get on here and I make wild and ridiculous comments about, say, Harmony being an idiot, and then we laugh and we have a cordial public conversation that shows that I clearly respect her. Same with Rump or Grand DM or Noble Shield or any number of others who have shown up on here. Hell, there's a whole group of them. I remember, I want to say it was DM James, that when I mentioned him, he was celebrating that he'd finally made it because he got on Intelligence as a Dump Stat. There's a lot of people who see it like that for some reason. It's like, man, you've made it when Daniel makes fun of you on Intelligence as a Dump Stat. You, on the other hand, go off on mean-spirited and demeaning rants, and then you come out and try and tell us all that wasn't what you did. And that's insulting to everyone involved, which is why you get lampooned and ostracized, and why people don't take you seriously. Try a little humility, a little self-reflection, and maybe make fun of yourself from time to time, because when you're incredibly arrogant, you have to be self-depreciating a bit to balance it out. Trust me, I know. That said, if you want to sit and talk on stream, I'll be as fair can be, but for some reason I get the distinct impression that I'm using Intelligence as a dump stat and believing that you will take this little critique to heart. Last word of advice, stick to interviews. You're actually halfway decent at them. And as for me, I'm going to stick to BC headache powder. I'll see you guys next time.